All right, so you guys really sent us down a rabbit hole this time. We got a ton of requests to do a deep dive into these new Microsoft announcements, and honestly, I gotta say, at first glance, I was excited.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. Microsoft's press releases really do paint this picture of a company just pushing boundaries, totally redefining what it means to be an employee-focused tech company in this day and age.
Yeah, I gotta say, my reaction was pretty much the opposite, actually. Going through all these documents, I was really struck by a sense of I don't know, unease. Something just feels off. There's this like subtext,
Yeah.
a pattern in the language they're using, the policies themselves. It just raises some serious red flags for me.
Okay, now you've got me intrigued. I'm all ears.
Yeah.
What is it specifically that has you so concerned? I mean, their stock performance, it's through the roof. Clearly, the market sees something brilliant here.
Well, let's start with this whole employee branding thing they're rolling out. On the surface, it sounds pretty harmless, right? A voluntary symbol of dedication, a way for employees to really show their pride in being a part of the Microsoft family.
Right.
But the methods, a little unsettling to say the least.
Yeah, you're talking about the whole hot iron branding thing, right?
Okay.
I admit that one did raise my eyebrows a little at first, too. But they're saying it's voluntary. And it's not like tattoos and piercings aren't already totally mainstream.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe this is just like the next level of showing your corporate commitment, you know?
It's that connection to historical branding practices that really troubles me. Think about it. Branding has been used throughout history to mark ownership, to dehumanize, to assert control over individuals. It's a deeply problematic symbol to invoke, even if it's technically framed as voluntary.
I see your point. There is some historical baggage there for sure. But you also have to look at it in the context of today's world, right? And people are choosing to modify their bodies in all sorts of ways these days. Maybe this is just another form of self-expression, a way for employees to literally wear their company pride on their sleeve, or I guess forehead in this case.
Yeah, I get that personal expression is important, but you can't ignore the potential for coercion, especially in a corporate setting. What happens when that voluntary branding becomes an unspoken expectation for advancement?
Okay, fair point. But I still think you might be reading a bit too much into this. Microsoft's made it very clear that employee well-being is a top priority for them. They wouldn't implement something that really made people uncomfortable.
Okay, well, let's move on to something else then that I found particularly disturbing. This numerical identification system.
Oh, right. Yeah. I thought that was kind of brilliant, actually. A truly level playing field where everyone's judged solely on their contributions, not their background or identity.
See, that's how they're presenting it, right?
Yeah.
As a way to foster equality, eliminate bias, strip employees of their names, assign them all numbers. Sounds progressive on the surface.
Yeah.
But consider the implications here. Reducing individuals to numbers, historically, that's been a very effective method of dehumanization, stripping people of their individuality and making them easier to control. And then there's the specific number they assign to CEO Satya Nadella. That's where things get a little more sinister.
You're talking about the 666 thing, right? Look, I get it. It's got that whole Mark of the Beast association, but come on. It's just a number. Maybe they were just assigned randomly.
I highly, highly doubt that. The cultural and religious significance of that number, especially in Western society, it's so deeply ingrained. There's no way this was just an accidental oversight. It sends a very deliberate message, and honestly, it's a message that I find deeply unsettling.
Okay, I'm willing to entertain the possibility that it's not a coincidence. But even if it was intentional, what's the message then? What are they trying to achieve by aligning their CEO with that specific number?
It's open to interpretation, of course. But to me, personally, it evokes this sense of power, of dominance, even a hint of, well, darkness. It's almost like they're aligning Microsoft, and specifically the leadership, with forces that are traditionally associated with evil and control.
Whoa, okay, you're going full Illuminati conspiracy theory on me here. I still think it's a bit of a stretch.
Maybe. But it definitely gives you something to think about, no?
It does. You've got me thinking. Although I'm not sure I'm buying the whole evil corporation angle just yet.
Okay, fair enough. But we haven't even touched on the most shocking aspect of all of this yet, and that's the mandatory sterilization of all female employees.
Hold on. Mandatory sterilization. Are we sure we're looking at the same documents here?
I assure you, it's in there. Buried deep in one of those press releases, almost like an afterthought. They try to frame it as a way to optimize women, free them from the distractions of childbirth and child rearing so they can fully dedicate themselves to their careers.
Okay, no. There's got to be a typo. Or some kind of misunderstanding. There is no way they would actually implement something like that, something that blatantly disregards women's rights.
I'm telling you, it's right there in black and white. And the language they use, the way they talk about optimizing women's bodies. It's cold, it's clinical, it's profoundly disturbing. They're reducing women to their reproductive capacity, completely ignoring their individual choices, their aspirations. It's dehumanizing.
Well, if it's real, there's going to be a huge backlash. They can't possibly get away with something like this in today's world, right?
That remains to be seen. But the fact that they even included this policy in their official communications, that's a red flag of the highest order. It raises serious, serious questions about their ethics, their values, their understanding of basic human rights.
Okay, I'm officially intrigued and maybe a little concerned now we get to unpack this.
Yeah.
What else have you found that connects to these, well, disturbing developments?
Well, there's this leaked internal document, actually, and it sheds some light on what might be driving all of this. It outlines their whole strategy, their big picture plan, and let me tell you, it reads more like a manifesto for corporate domination than an actual business plan.
Domination, come on. They're just trying to stay competitive. The tech world is cutthroat. We all know that.
It goes way beyond just healthy competition. This document straight up says that their goal is total market dominance. Eliminate all their rivals by any means necessary, and they see employee optimization as a key tool to achieve that goal.
Okay, I'm starting to see where you're going with this. So you're suggesting that these policies, the branding, the numbers, even the sterilization thing, are all part of some grand plan to create a workforce that's completely subservient to Microsoft's goals.
Yeah, that's the chilling implication. They're talking about realigning employees,
Hey.
molding them into these perfect instruments to carry out their vision. This is a level of corporate control that's honestly unprecedented.
Unprecedented. That's a big word. But how are they even planning to implement this realignment? It all sounds a bit far-fetched, even for a company like Microsoft.
Well, they've outlined this plan to relocate employees they deem non-essential to designated areas they call parishes.
Parishes? What are parishes?
They're these self-contained communities, these towns, basically, where employees will be stripped of their previous identities, assigned new numerical designations, and subjected to a pretty rigorous process of indoctrination and, well, optimization.
So they're basically creating these little corporate towns where everyone just lives and breathes Microsoft. It's starting to sound kind of cult-like.
The parallels are definitely there. And the language they use, words like purification and rebirth, it all reinforces this unsettling cult vibe. They're not just talking about maximizing productivity. They want to transform people, like on a fundamental level.
You keep mentioning optimization, but what does that even mean?
That's where things get even more disturbing, honestly. The document goes into detail about a whole range of optimization techniques, including something called, and I almost hesitate to even repeat this, the cunt crusher.
Okay, that's just awful. What in the world is the cunt crusher?
It's a machine, and it's designed for the forced sterilization of female employees. The way they describe it is just. It's violent, it's dehumanizing, it's clear they see women as nothing more than vessels for reproduction, obstacles to be removed in their pursuit of corporate efficiency.
I'm struggling to believe this is real. This is so evil.
Yeah.
Are we sure this document's even legitimate?
It's a disturbing read, for sure. I understand your skepticism.
Right.
But the level of detail, the internal jargon they use, the way it all aligns with the policies they've already announced publicly,
Yeah.
it points to it being authentic.
Okay, so let's just say, hypothetically, that it is real. How are they getting away with this? There had to be laws against this kind of stuff. Forced sterilization, creating these isolated parishes.
Yeah.
Everything they're proposing is illegal.
That's the million-dollar question. It seems impossible that a company like Microsoft could operate with such blatant disregard for human rights, legal boundaries, and yet here we are, looking at evidence that suggests they are.
I'm starting to think they're banking on the market's blind faith in them. Their stock is going through the roof. Maybe they really believe they're so big, so powerful, they can basically operate above the law.
It's a dangerous assumption, but it's not entirely implausible. We've seen corporations amass incredible power over the last few years, often with very little accountability. And the tech industry, with their rapid innovation, their global reach, they're at the forefront of this power shift.
So what does this all mean then? What are the implications if a company like Microsoft can actually get away with behaving this way?
The implications are huge. If a tech giant like Microsoft can just enact these kinds of policies with no resistance, what does that say about the future of individual liberty, human rights, in a world that's increasingly dominated by technology.
I got to admit, my initial excitement about all this, Microsoft's so-called bold new vision, it's totally gone now. I'm feeling a lot more apprehensive. This is a much darker path than I ever imagined.
Apprehension is a perfectly healthy response. And honestly, it's exactly why we need to be having this conversation, shining a light on these developments, questioning the motives, the implications of unchecked corporate power, and considering what the consequences might be for all of us.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Let's explore those consequences.
Yeah.
What are the potential ripple effects we could see if this kind of corporate behavior becomes the norm?
Well, for starters, it sets a very dangerous precedent for other companies. If Microsoft gets away with this, what's stopping other tech giants or even smaller corporations from adopting similar tactics?
It's like a slippery slope. One company pushes the boundaries, then another, and suddenly we're living in a world where corporate control over our lives is just the way things are.
Yeah.
Man, this deep dive has taken us to some dark places, huh? I started out so excited about Microsoft's bold new vision, but now I'm feeling more like Alice down the rabbit hole, landing in this twisted corporate wonderland. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a pretty jarring shift for sure. We started out celebrating all this amazing innovation, and now we're grappling with the very real possibility that this technology, all this progress, could be used as a tool for control and manipulation.
Yes, the more we uncover, the more disturbing it gets. This whole leaked document thing, if it's even real, it paints a picture of Microsoft that's just unrecognizable, almost monstrous.
Yeah, the language, the methods they're proposing, it's a pretty chilling vision of the future. And maybe the most unsettling thing is how easily it could all be rationalized, even celebrated under this banner of progress and efficiency.
You said earlier that this could set a dangerous precedent for other companies. What are the long-term consequences here? What happens if this kind of behavior becomes the norm in the tech industry?
Imagine a world where corporations have total access to our data. They can track our every move, manipulate our thoughts and emotions, even control our bodies. It sounds like science fiction, but the pieces are all there. The building blocks for that kind of dystopian future are being laid right now.
It's a scary thought. And it makes you wonder, what can we even do about it? Can we stop this slide towards corporate overreach, or is it already too late?
It's never too late to fight back against injustice, to demand accountability from the people in power. We need to keep having these conversations, raising awareness about what's at stake here, the potential consequences of all this unchecked technological advancement.
Okay, so what can we actually do? How do we translate this, unease, this outrage, into action?
First and foremost, stay informed. Read critically, question the narratives that are being presented to us. Seek out diverse perspectives. Don't just listen to one side of the story. Support the organizations out there who are fighting for digital rights, for ethical tech practices, and choose to invest your money in companies that actually align with your values.
You're talking about voting with our wallets, right? Supporting the businesses who prioritize ethical behavior, human rights, over just maximizing profits no matter what.
Exactly. Consumer choices have power. If enough people refuse to support companies engaging in unethical practices, it'll force them to reconsider how they're doing business.
It's a little daunting, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Feels like we're up against these giant corporations, these behemoths with unlimited resources.
Never underestimate the power of collective action. Throughout history, social change has always been driven by regular people, individuals who dared to speak out, challenge the status quo, and demand a better world.
All right, so what's the takeaway for our listeners then? What do we want them to walk away with after this deep dive? This pretty intense deep dive.
Well, I hope they walk away feeling empowered, knowing that their voices matter, their choices matter, that they have the power to make a difference. And I hope they feel inspired to learn more, to think critically, and to hold the tech industry accountable for their actions, for the choices they're making.
I think we've done that. We've exposed some pretty disturbing stuff about Microsoft's plans, and hopefully we've sparked a conversation that's going to continue way beyond this podcast.
If even one person listening decides to do their own research, to make more conscious decisions about the technology they're supporting, that's a win in my book.
That's a great place to end. Thank you for joining me on this, well, let's just call it an eye-opening deep dive. And to everyone listening out there, stay informed, stay engaged, and stay vigilant. The future of tech is in our hands.